Welcome back to episode 8 of the Sports Talk ATL podcast. I am Chase Irle at Sports Talk ATL, joined by Jake Gordon at Cantguard, Jake on Twitter, and Alex Lord at Go Sports Talk on Twitter. Guys, we have some huge breaking news from Zach Klein, a little local guy getting it on the news, but Jake Fisher backed it up. Dejounte Murray on the verge of potentially being traded to the Hawks here. I don't really know what on the verge means because now as things keep coming out, it seems like every team's in on this. And I was kind of skeptical. They said Gallo and a couple first-round picks. I knew that was never going to get the Dejounte Murray deal done. So, now we're hearing 3 first-round picks and a young player, stuff like that. I feel like that's a lot more realistic. But if you had to put odds on it, from 0 to 100%, what are the odds that Dejounte Murray is wearing a Hawks uniform to open the season next year?
Go ahead, Jake.
I'm not doing any more. I'm not doing any more guarantees that people are going to be on Atlanta sports teams. Go ahead.
I couldn't even believe somebody was like, stop talking about this. You already ruined the Deshaun Watson thing. It was like we were comping somebody else's report, whatever. I think it's around 40% because it seems like there are a bunch of teams that are interested from those other reports. I mean, I wouldn't go more than 50, that's for sure.
I'll go the other way. I'll say 60. I say it's close to like 60%.
Yeah, I mean, am I going to be a lame ass and split you and just say it's 50-50? Probably. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, to me, I think that the Hawks probably have the best package to put together for a player like Dejounte Murray. I know why they wouldn't want a guy like John Collins. They're trying to rebuild, adding a guy 4 years, $100 million while you're rebuilding like the Spurs are trying to do doesn't make a lot of sense. But I mean, and there's a guy that I would hate to give up, and it's 0-0. I mean, I would love to avoid giving up in that trade, but if you throw 0-0 in there, like I don't know who else is really going to offer, with a first or a couple firsts and 0-0. Like that's probably the best they're going to get from a lot of teams. I'd like to avoid that, but I mean, you talked about AJ Griffin, who we just drafted. He reportedly worked out for the Spurs like 9 times. I mean, him and 2 first rounds, him and 3 first-round picks, something like that. I think that's something the Hawks can offer, especially since they have Charlotte's protected first-rounder. They can trade a 2023 and a 2025. There's a lot of ways that the Hawks can get a deal like this done. So I'll say 50% because I do think they have the best roster to make a deal like that for Dejounte Murray. But at the same time, we are talking about a blockbuster deal. We are talking about, the Spurs dangling him out in front of every team that wants an all-star caliber player, Dejounte Murray, which who wouldn't? He has 2 years left on his contract at a reasonable $32 million price. And then you can extend him after that. To me, I think the Hawks really need to get this deal done. So I think they could force Schlenk to overpay here. But I do think they have the pieces to get this done, and I think it needs to happen, or it's going to be super disappointing. It's going to be another, and there's pressure on Schlenk. Like let's not lie, there is pressure to get a deal done like that. Now an all-star caliber player is available. They need to get this deal done, in my opinion. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think the crowd who are talking about, I won't do 3 first-round picks are ridiculous. I mean, you won't find a professional sports league with a lower hit rate in the draft than the NBA. Outside of the lottery pick is gonna maybe net you a supporting cast starter. I mean, at best, and there's the cases where Jokic went in the 2nd round, and that's atypical. That doesn't happen. So these draft picks for the Hawks, because they're going to continually be in the playoffs, and if they don't make this trade, they might not win a championship, but they're not going to be in the lottery. So these draft picks are basically useless. You might as well they're not basically useless, but they're as close to useless as you can get. You might as well get rid of them and get a guy like Dejounte Murray, who is already a star. I mean, he is on the verge of becoming a star, nearly averaging a triple-double. I mean, those guys don't come around often. He can be the exact duo guard that works with Trae Young. He can be that, he's almost like a way better version of DeLon Wright. I mean, he is a way better version of DeLon Wright, and Trae and DeLon worked really well together last year.
I like the Russell Westbrook light. I like that comparison, except he's a better defensive player. Yeah, I think this is something that needs to happen. I don't think it's going to be just draft picks because, like you said, they're basically useless. They're going to want more than just draft picks. I think it's going to have to be at least one of I mean, if they really like Griffin that much, okay, he's obviously included plus draft picks, but I think you're going to have to give away at least one proven player, which to me is DeAndre Hunter or Onyeka Okongwu if you're going to get this deal done. I just don't see them taking 3 first-round draft picks. That doesn't move the needle for a lot of teams for an all-star player that's just entering his prime, almost average a triple-double, a really good defensive player too. And I think one of the things Atlanta has working for him is the whole clutch sports movement. Dejounte Murray is a clutch sports client. These guys kind of want to facilitate these trades early. Jake Fisher talked about that. That's why I think, facilitating a trade to Atlanta, I think it works out. I think you're willing to give away like a really good young player because you think you can extend him in Atlanta even longer than that and have him for the next 7 years alongside Trae Young.
Yeah, and a couple things too. With Murray, you talk about the draft picks, if you don't have one of the top 4 picks, and the Hawks are a team even without Murray that were not a lottery team last year. You talk about adding Dejounte Murray, non-lottery picks. I guess you can package a couple of them together for the most part. But there's this kid coming out. I've been talking about him a lot on Twitter. Victor Wembanyama. He's a 7-footer out of France. He shoots like KD and he blocks shots like prime DeAndre Jordan. Like the kid is ridiculous. And I think San Antonio is genuinely like, okay, like we're really going to try to go for this kid. He is probably one of the best prospects to come out since maybe even before like Ben Simmons. He's can't miss, and people are going to be all about him. He's already getting Giannis that can shoot comparisons, which is probably a little extreme, but there's a prize there at the end, and that's probably why they want to load up on picks and they want to strip their roster down so they have a chance at this guy. And I kind of thought it was strange that they weren't that interested in John Collins. I understand he makes your team more competitive, but I feel like John Collins is a player you can flip for more picks.
Yeah, I agree. Something that needs to be noted is Landry Fields, who's now the Hawks general manager, has had an unbelievable run. He ended his playing career like 5-ish years ago.
And he's already not been retired long.
Yeah, he's already a general manager, but he was the general manager for the Spurs G League team. So, there is a connection to this.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about John Collins because we've heard kind of mixed reports. First, he was kind of the centerpiece of this deal. I still think John Collins is out. I mean, we also heard reporting that John Collins wants to be done in Atlanta regardless. So whether this means keeping John Collins, I mean, ideally, if we get Dejounte Murray and keep John Collins, I kind of like that. That seems like that could be a team that could compete in the Eastern Conference. But, I mean, if John Collins wants out, he's not going to get more offensive touches with Murray coming. He's going to get less. And that's something he's looking for. And if he wants out, I think that's another trade that could be on the horizon. Now, is that facilitating a John Collins deal first so you can get more pieces to send to the Spurs? That could be in the cards. But it could also just be, finding a way to, clear cap space and upgrade the roster and just keep acquiring assets. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. I don't think just because John Collins is no longer a part of this deal, according to Klein and Fisher, that he isn't on the move somewhere. I think there's still a more than 50% chance John Collins is playing for another team by the start of next season.
Yeah, this seems like a picture perfect, scenario for a 3-team trade. You talk about but you have a guy that we want to get rid of, but we don't want young assets, and then you don't want him, but you want young assets. Like I feel like there could be a third partner here to make this whole thing work. And of course, I feel like ever since Matt Ryan left Atlanta, now Atlanta fans just want to argue about John Collins all day. I just kind of hope they trade the guy eventually. I think you can. I don't know what you drafted Jalen Johnson for if you don't plan on him taking over that spot. You free up a ton of money. It just makes sense to me. I saw where PJ Tucker is expecting to get 3 for $30 from the Sixers. If you free up John Collins, maybe you can offer him something comparable. It's tough to give a guy that old that much money, but you talk about Murray and PJ Tucker on the court at the same time, and maybe still Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu. There's some defensive pieces there.
Yeah, there's. The Hawks have a ton of open roster spots right now too. So regardless of what goes down with the trade, there will be free agent additions, like 4, 5, 6 of them. So depending on how many players the Hawks trade away, of course. So there will be room right there for, additions like PJ Tucker, though I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I wouldn't give him 3 for $30. That's ridiculous. But what is he, 37 or 38, something like that? That's too old for me.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be 38 next season.
Well, the Sixers are desperate.
Yeah, I heard not just the Sixers. Multiple teams are going to be willing to give him a contract into his 40s. I wouldn't even be surprised if someone gave him 4 years. He just kind of got that.
Somebody mentioned this on my Twitch stream last night, so this is just somebody that was commenting on my Twitch stream, so take it for what it's worth. But they told me that apparently the holdup, I think this may have came from Fisher, is that they're trying to guarantee more of Gallo's money to make the contract work, to make the trade work.
Yeah,
I think it has to be close to like 12 or 13 million.
Yeah, it is. I think it actually has to be like 15 or 16, which for a team like the Spurs, like they're going to eat that money, and it's an expiring contract. They can even buy him out. So he's probably going to be bought out right away, right when that trade gets facilitated, and they'll eat that money. They don't care. They're not trying to be good. They're going full rebuild mode. So that's really the only reason Gallo's involved in this deal is to make the money work. So yeah, that needs to be reworked by July 1st because that's when his contract becomes guaranteed. So if this deal is going to be centered around Gallo, just matching salaries and then young assets, it's going to happen in the next couple of days. So, Hawks fans, I mean, hell, who knows? Knowing the way this podcast goes, like by the time we end this episode or halfway through, Dejounte Murray will be on another team. Hopefully it's the Hawks, but it really is going to happen that quickly. It's going to happen in the next couple of days. So definitely something to keep an eye on. John Collins, something to keep an eye on. I think this is still going to be a really big offseason for the Hawks where we see a lot of moving pieces. We kind of thought it might happen before the NBA draft, but it didn't. But I still think a ton of moves are coming.
Yeah, it's inevitable. Tony Ressler is not satisfied. And it's so weird to me that, a quote came up on my timeline from back when Budenholzer was here about, the buck stops with me. I make all the decisions. Budenholzer obviously has the largest voice, but I'm the one who signs off. And it came up because somebody was talking about, Landry Fields getting promoted amid maybe the most pivotal offseason of Trae Young's career. That first offseason when we signed Gallo and Bogdanovich, that was exciting and whatnot. But it's basically just going to be an incredibly busy offseason, and he made a significant change in the front office. So I don't know if he's dissatisfied with Schlenk or anything.
I was just a promotion. Landry Fields has been one of the most sought after, GMs kind of like in waiting candidates. You still have Schlenk, who's a president of basketball operations. He's the lead guy. And then Fields has just become his right-hand man. And the big reason Fields has become so coveted around the NBA world is because of his relationships with players. Obviously, he just played 5 years ago, but he has great relationships with a lot of players. And that's the big reason for the promotion. I think it's more you're giving him that promotion because you don't want another team to go steal him and name him general manager or something like that.
I could agree with that, but I think a person like him, I saw somebody say this, that it was more just a title and salary raise. There's no way somebody who is as fast of a riser as he that doesn't get more responsibility as well. Like he certainly got more responsibility with the promotion as well. There's no way he would take it just for the title and pay raise.
Well, you guys want me to call Travis and ask him?
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you. I mean, there's definitely going to be part of him, but let's be real. If hypothetically another team comes calling and offers him the president of basketball operations role, like that's the significant upgrade. That's the real promotion that he's looking for. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of his what he has to do, his duties are the same, and a lot of it was just kind of a title thing, but. Regardless, they work together. I don't think there's a lot of big dicking like Landry Fields and Travis Schlenk being like, "Oh, we hate." Like otherwise they wouldn't be together. So
yeah, that's true.
I think.
Hang on, real quick, Chase. Alex, are you just raw dogging like a whole gallon of orange juice right now?
Yeah,
that is insane. Pour a glass, man.
No, don't be ridiculous.
You got to sub to the YouTube to see that, but yeah.
Let's talk about the Braves' top story from the weekend, which is obviously Freddie Freeman's return. I want to get your guys' thoughts on it because to me, the whole thing was just awkward as hell. Like I knew it was going to be a little bit weird. I think it was 10 times weirder than I ever could have imagined. I mean, a lot of tears flowing, a lot of, does this guy even want to be on the Dodgers anymore? And I know we're kind of saying this, but it really did feel that way. Like there were times just like where it's just like, yeah, like the things he said, the way he was acting, the crying. And it was odd, but from top to bottom, just a super weird weekend. And I'm honestly glad to get it out of the way. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and what do you kind of think? I mean, it almost feels like Freddie needs to be on the Braves right now. Like I walked away from that series being like, dude, this guy needs to be on the Braves. It's stupid that he's not on the Braves.
I didn't feel bad for him until Sunday. So Friday, I was at the game Friday, and I saw the press conference right before I was walking into the gate, and I saw the press conference where he had to like take a moment and get up, and I'm like, all right, whatever, dude. And then he's on the field and he's getting his ring, and then he's crying a little bit. That he takes his first at bat and he's crying a little bit. I'm like, okay, yeah, a lot of emotions, a lot of memories, pretty normal stuff. Still don't feel bad for him, whatever. In the eighth inning of Sunday Night Baseball, 2.5 games later, this guy's still at first base, like welling up a little bit. It's kind of like, okay, man, like, are you all right?
I never felt bad. Like there was never a point where I felt bad about the situation because I felt like, listen, dude, Freddie Freeman had. I mean, I don't feel
bad for the situation. I feel bad for him.
We had a whole MLB. Well, I'm not going to feel bad for a man who's making legitimately 180 times more than me and living in Los Angeles with a beautiful wife and family. Like, sorry, you have a 10 times better life than me. I do not feel bad for you. I'm not going to feel bad for that man. Sorry. There's nothing that I should feel bad about. But I just was like, I mean, dude, he had 4 months. I mean, he had a whole MLB lockout to make a decision. And, when the lockout ended, he still was like, oh, should I go to LA or Atlanta? I think it was so clear and obvious that he knows he fucked up. And he knows the next 6 years, whatever he does in Los Angeles, joining that super team is never going to mean anything compared to what he would have done in Atlanta. I think he knows that his legacy is tarnished. I mean, listen, we're always going to have that one World Series. It's great, but you going to the Dodgers, like that tarnished your legacy. And you saw it in the 7th inning with the bases loaded, him coming up getting booed. I'm sure he never thought that would happen. And that's going to happen a lot more over the course of this 6-year contract. So he had his weekend where everyone's cheering for him. I was there on Saturday and Sunday, a lot of standing ovations. But at the end of the day, like, when playoffs come, like it's not going to be like that anymore. So it's going to be interesting how his emotions change when we see him next time around, probably in the postseason.
I think it's
definitely. Go ahead, Alex.
I don't even think it's an argument that he regrets his decision. I mean, you could see it by his body language, his own words, and then Clayton Kershaw came out and said that quote about, "I hope we're not the second fiddle." Buddy, you are. Hate to tell you, but you're the second fiddle. Freddie knows it. The Dodgers knows it. The Braves know it. It's so clear. It's written on your forehead. I mean, Freddie had 50 seconds of standing ovation. I clocked it on Sunday. And this guy was just trying to be like, all right, I just want to play. You guys are going to make me cry. And then he started tearing up again. Kenley Jansen didn't cry. Kenley Jansen won a World Series with the Dodgers, Mickey Mouse World Series, but still won it. All-time saves leader. I mean,
just as long. He's been with the Dodgers just as long.
Yeah.
And, well, I do think there's a slight difference. There were Dodgers fans that were constantly in Kenley Jansen's mentions, threatening to kill him for blowing games, even though he was one of the best closers in the game.
He's 8th all time in saves, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I mean, you go look at Kenley Jansen's baseball reference page. He's sitting there with 2 ERAs every year, and Dodgers fans were constantly like, "This guy's the worst fucking pitcher of all time. Let's kill his family." And it's like, all right, dude, maybe I don't want to be here anymore. So I think there's a little bit difference in how he was treated throughout his tenure, but still, yeah. I mean, it was weird, dude. I was a little shocked at how every game, it was just a well of emotions for him. And it's clear, even his own team kind of realized that, this is probably where he wants to be. It is second fiddle. And I think in a weird way, that could hurt the clubhouse vibes of the Dodgers. Could this be the end of the Dodgers' demise? Not to mention they spent $160 million on a first baseman when now I look at the Dodgers roster, their starting pitching is kind of suspect. Their bullpen's not as good as it used to be in the past. I know we lost 2 out of 3. We should have won 2 out of 3. That team was not nearly as scary as the teams we played in the last 2 years. And now people want to call it an all-star team. Listen, that team was not an all-star team. That team was pound for pound, I don't even think as good as the Braves. So Craig Kimbrell is closing games. Craig Kimbrell can't close games anymore. I'm sorry, RIP, but you keep taking the Braves.
Now.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that.
My closer cannot have a man bun. Get out of here.
You keep taking the Braves crumbs. It's not going to work out for you, and that's what the Dodgers are doing. And I'm sorry, they looked like the most vulnerable team that we played in a long time. Unfortunately, we lose 2 out of 3, but you know what I think about Sunday's game. I think
here's my thing. This isn't like a direct analogy. They're not completely comparable. Bear with me. Y'all know how I am with my analogies. It's almost like when KD went to the Warriors. Obviously not the same. What are you laughing at? But it's one of those things.
Full Colin Cowherd right now. I
really am. No, if I was going full Colin Cowherd, I'd be like, it's kind of like when you take your wife out to dinner, shit like that.
Your ex-wife out to dinner.
But no, I mean, it's kind of like when KD went to the Warriors. We're like, that's not Freddie's team. Like, you could always say like the Braves were Freddie Freeman's team. You could say that. I probably wouldn't say that. You could say that. It's like the Dodgers. Like, you don't think that's like, you don't look at that and they're like, oh, Freddie Freeman is the guy, and that he's that guy. Like, nobody really said that with Kevin Durant. It was always Steph's team. And even when they won a ring, I don't know if that made him feel hollow or if it didn't really feel like it meant anything, but I kind of feel like it's the same situation. Like, they don't love you like that. Like, they don't love you like they love their own guys. They don't love you like they love Will Smith. Guys that have been there since the start. They don't love you like Justin Turner. They don't. I mean, even Mookie Betts, who's been there a little bit less time, they don't love you like.
Yeah,
that.
I was just about to say the Dodgers really just buy championships. I mean, Mookie, Trey Turner. What are we talking about? Clayton Kershaw is about the only one who's really,
They try to buy championships. They still can't win them, but
that's true.
That's neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, there's just something about the Dodgers. It's never going to feel the same. It's never going to feel the same. But let's talk about some of the things that happened. Just some key things before we get back into some other things. Strider, Sunday night, absolute beast. People were ready to throw him out after his one outing against the Giants. Listen, there was clearly something coming off like an 106-pitch performance, which he'd never done before. Yeah, his velocity was down in that matchup. It was back up against the Dodgers. He looked great. I mean, his changeup has really come into a reliable third pitch. And I always said, if he gets a third pitch, he's going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball. I think he's blossoming into that. I think Sunday night showed that. We did have an injury to Ronald Acuña. That sucks. He came in on a scooter. No fracture, thank God, because you get a fracture on those feet. I mean, I swear you're out for. I mean, just ask Ozzy Albies. He's going to be out for 2 months. So no fracture, but those things are still weird. I wouldn't be surprised if they announce an IL stint for him. I'm hoping it's still going to be day to day, and then obviously just recently before we hopped on here, Kenley Jansen goes down with an irregular heartbeat. I think that's going to be the biggest loss of them all because our relievers are dropping like flies. We had one of the best bullpens in the league coming in. Now you got Luke Jackson out, Tyler Matzek still not back, and now Kenley Jansen injured. And God, don't get me started. If Will Smith takes over as the closer role, I might have a legit aneurysm if we put him in there to close games while Kenley Jansen's out.
I think you can fully expect it to happen. I think it's like for sure.
I just don't know how you don't put AJ Minter in that role. It doesn't make any sense. I know Minter's actually given up a run in like his last 2 or 3 outings, but still Minter's just so much better. I mean, Will Smith has a 5 FIP on the season, and he has like a 4.5 FIP over the last 3 seasons. The guy is not a closer. The guy is barely even a setup man. I wouldn't even call him a setup man. He is a middle relieving, long reliever to me. And if you put him in the closer role, I mean, I swear, Brian Snitker and his blind loyalty to this man, I will never understand because I actually think Snitker's a pretty decent manager more often than not. But, geez, him and Will Smith, you put 3 vodka waters in me, I will rant on this man and Will Smith for hours.
As long as Brian Snitker keeps turning into the baseball version of like Phil Jackson with the Bulls in the playoffs, I can live with it, I guess. But that's
it's
another
so bad during the regular season.
It is it's literally like we all see it coming. It's crazy because we will see it coming. We'll be like, oh well, this isn't going to work, and then it won't work, and then we'll just do it again the next night. Like it's insane.
Well, it's like it works like half the time, which is not good enough in the MLB. So even when it works, I get pissed because I'm like, it's still stupid. Like it's still
the ends don't justify the means. Yeah, no, like absolutely not.
It makes absolutely no sense what we're doing here, and it's like we all see it coming. Like the fact that I'm even saying this, like it should be no way an option. But like I feel like Will Smith is going to be closing games for us for the next month, and I'm going to flip out.
I'm gonna squat on a take here. Somebody is gonna have this opinion in our mentions within the next 2 months, and I'm gonna clip this and I'm gonna go back and clip this. Somebody is going to say, when Mike Soroka comes back, we should do what we did with John Smoltz when he was coming off injuries and make him a closer. I promise somebody will say that in our mentions within the next 2 months.
Well, I mean, that's just so stupid, but
exactly. That's why somebody's going to say it in our mentions. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I know. I hear everything. I do see Mike Soroka coming back and potentially being a reliever. I wrote about that as an option. I could see him as a reliever, and he could be a pretty good reliever. It's kind of a wonky fit, but I also don't know where he fits coming back. I mean, if he ends
It'd be
up,
nice to have Kirby Yates back right now.
Yeah, I mean, if he looks like anything he did when he, in 2019 before both injuries, like he's obviously going to be in the rotation. But I just don't see them going out there and throwing him like 6 innings, like for at least a couple months. I mean, even when he comes back. So I do think there's a good chance. But you know who else could be in there in the bullpen? Ian Anderson. I mean, this guy has completely almost lost it seems like, as a starter. I'm saying I'm not taking Spencer Strider out of the starter's role. There's no way. He's too valuable there. He's our second best pitcher. It's him and Max Fried. And I love Kyle Wright and I still believe in him, but Spencer Strider has clearly become our second best pitcher on the team.
I think you're being a little reactionary there. I don't know about clearly the second best, but he's pitching.
Bro, he has 80 strikeouts in 52 innings. That is not reactionary.
I understand that, but we have to see some consistency, because last year it would have still been Ian Anderson. It can't switch who's the second best every other week. I would say right now, yeah, he's definitely the second best.
Well,
but overall,
Morton was definitely the second best last year. Ian Anderson has always been like on the cusp of like he's really good for 4 or 5 innings, but it's hard for him. His control and just not having a really good third pitch has always held him back from being that ace level guy.
That's another gripe with Snicker, though. It's just a pattern that he should have picked up on this. We picked up on it months ago.
Yeah,
I think everything is going to regress to the mean. I think Charlie Morton will finish the year as the second best starter. He's starting to come around. He's starting to look like his old self. Obviously, he's older, and you can't really count on it. And Spencer Strider is looking good, but I think
I agree with you on Morton. I think Morton could be the second best guy, but I just think the power that Strider brings, like you cannot take it. He's a top 3 guy. You can't take him out of the rotation unless you're worried about his workload. And you want to like save him and make him that because he would have, be really good in that multi-inning relief role that are so valuable in the playoffs. But I just think he's too good in the rotation. Unless you're worried about, his workload, he's got to stay in there. So then you're talking about Soroka, Ian Anderson not starting probably because, Morton, he's going to be in there. Kyle Wright, unless he really falls off a cliff, he's going to be in there. So I just think that Strider, Anderson, or Soroka that is probably going to have to move to the bullpen. And right now, there's no way I'm taking Strider out of the rotation.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I also, too, advise people to be a little more cautious. I'm not saying you guys, but everybody just acts like Mike Soroka is going to come back and post a 2.5 run ERA again. Yeah. Very much far from a guarantee.
Yeah, I said that. That's why I said I think we're going to need to add a right-handed reliever because – we don't know what we're going to get out of Soroka. All these guys coming back, Soroka, Kirby Yates, Jay Jackson, like those are 3 guys that could really help the team. But I'm not like I don't think any of them are a sure thing by any means. Like Kirby Yates hasn't pitched since 2019. Neither is Mike Soroka. Jay Jackson really doesn't move the needle that much anyways. So while these 3 guys could all come back and really have a huge impact, they could also all come back and do nothing, which is why I think adding a right-handed reliever, especially now with Kenley Jansen going down, at some point, Darren O'Day and Jackson Stevens, those guys shouldn't be on the roster, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Richard Rodriguez, his suspension's almost up, isn't it? Get the band back together.
Even to that point,
do they count his games if you're not on a team?
Even to that same point, I don't think that you can really guarantee Matzek. He's obviously not in the same breath as Soroka and all those other guys because he was lights out 6 months ago. But he had a rough few outings at the beginning of the year. And obviously it was a shoulder issue. But I wouldn't even, put all my eggs in that basket. So I think adding a right-handed reliever is, priority.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But I still think I'm a lot more confident in Matzek. I think Matzek, as much as he threw into the postseason and then you have the lockout and then you have the shortened spring training, like it makes sense for him to come back with like a little, like a dead arm kind of thing. And we'll see. We'll know pretty quickly with Matzek. Like even in his rehab starts, if he's like out there throwing like 98, 99 and like just making kids look like little children out in A-ball and wherever else the hell they send him, like we'll know pretty quickly if he's going to be back to who he was. But I have a lot more confidence in Matzek than I do some of these other guys for sure.
Yeah, and another thing I don't really say we'd forget because he didn't really get a chance this year, man. But just keep forgetting, like we don't have Luke Jackson either. He's kind of become a forgotten man because he's not coming back, but it sucks. That's another one that we're down.
Yeah, and he's a free agent next year. I definitely think Luke Jackson's going to be a guy the Braves should bring back on a short-term deal. It makes too much sense. I love Luke Jackson, man. That guy's got to be the most underrated bullpen arm we've ever had. He did so much good things and was just hated.
He's really bringing down the overall attractiveness of the team, though. I saw something. He said he was more attractive than Dansby.
Whoa!
Yeah,
all right.
He's obviously kidding. Luke is actually.
Oh, I know. He's so ugly. Do not.
He's very. I like how now that he's like not playing, he just like shit posts with the rest of us.
Yeah,
I know. I love when like injured players are on Twitter like with everyone else. Like that is absolutely hilarious to me. All right, let's get into our just stop tweeting of the week. I'll pull it up since Jake doesn't know how to read. If I can find it.
Out loud, only out loud.
Where is this thing? It's a stupid one. I love these.
It was pretty stupid.
Yeah, just some guy.
It was just wrong. Like
Yeah,
that was
I
my
mean,
thing. I was
it
like,
was
you're
like-
just like, you've been proven wrong, but you're still just have this baseless narrative, and you're like, I'm just gonna keep going with this.
Yeah.
All right, man.
And it's like I've been saying it, and I'll continue to say it. Alex never offered Freeman a contract. This guy would have played for minimum wage. He wanted to be a Brave for life. His emotions and body language said enough. Like, yes, his emotions and body language did tell me he wanted to be a Brave for life and that he would much rather be here. But let's be clear, the Braves offered him a deal, and they offered him a deal that if you take taxes into consideration, would have been a much better deal for Freddie Freeman. Taking 5 years, taking 6 years and $10 million extra dollars when you're going to get taxed that, like, makes absolutely no sense. So, you know, Freddie had a thing where I don't know why. I guess it was just going back home to SoCal. Maybe it was for his family and his wife, you know, building their social media brand because she's huge on social media. I don't know what it was, but they definitely had an infatuation of some sorts with SoCal. Looking back on it, I think he realizes, yeah, I screwed up. But, you know, that's just so stupid. We didn't offer him a contract. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's just the talk.
It's like you're just wrong. Like that's not even like it's not an opinion. It's an incorrect fact. Like you're propagating misinformation. It's not true. Like, and that's my thing too. Is I kind of think about it being in Freddie's shoes sometimes. Like he's probably at brunch with like his wife and all of her like influencer friends.
I like how you say brunch because they're definitely a brunch family.
And they're just
sure.
absolutely a brunch family. And they're just sitting there just going on and on and on. He's just sitting there like, damn, I had a lot of friends back in Atlanta. And now he's just hanging around with his wife and her friends and
making TikToks.
Living in Los Angeles, just the phoniest place in the world. Like
picking out $2,000 outfits for their children, just like
getting
them swagged out for pictures.
Another thing too,
Charlie's fits are fresh.
Oh, I mean, fresh. I'm not gonna lie. No. Chelsea definitely has the boys like looking fresh as hell. Like, she knows what she's doing. Like, those guys are gonna be raised right, like looking like little ballers. But at the same time, like, it was so obvious that he made I guess the wrong decision, which is.
I thought it was interesting too, though. The last thing I guess about his contract is that somebody pointed this out that he has all those deferred payments, and there's like 10 years of deferred payments or something like that on his deal because they backloaded the hell out of it. He doesn't get that money if he gets traded. Like if he requests a trade or something like that just goes away.
That's crazy.
Well, it gets deferred, so I think he just
the deferred payments go away. Like you don't get them.
No, I don't know how any of that works, but that sounds even terrible.
This is also something somebody in my Twitch chat told me. So, but he sent me a link and I looked at it, and that's what somebody else said. So there's two sources for you, verified.
Yeah. Well, what do you have something to say?
I was just gonna say Casey Close is the agent in charge, and I don't know, she really fumbled the bag.
For sure. But the Braves, I mean, I always say this, like, listen, if Freddie Freeman wanted to be here, it's his decision at the end of the day. Like
Chipper said it. He was like, don't bluff them, and if Freddie wants to be here, he will be here. And this is what happened.
It's the same thing I say with Dansby. I mean, people always, Dansby Swanson is an upcoming free agent, and people are like, oh, he has the same agents as Freddie Freeman. He'll never re-sign him. Like, dude, if you don't think if Dansby Swanson wants to be in Atlanta, like, he's going to be in Atlanta. And people like always say, like, do you think Dansby, the way he saw, this is actually a good point. I don't even have this on the list. But do you think he saw the way Freddie Freeman reacted? And
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, I think that might affect his free agency decision, in a positive way. Like, hey, maybe
I was literally just about to say that exactly.
Maybe I made a mistake because everyone kind of says, "Oh, Dansby's boys with Freddie. He's going to the Dodgers." Blah blah blah. If I saw Freddie and the way he was reacting, I think I'd be second guessing that or going anywhere for that matter. Especially it's just over a few $1 million. Because like I've said, the Braves are going to have a ton of money to spend. I don't think, once again, I don't think it's going to be a money thing when it comes to Dansby Swanson. I think the Braves are going to offer him a big contract. It's going to be about, like, are you going to pinch pennies? Are you going to try to bluff the Braves? Or do you want to be here and, sign for the prime years of your career?
And he's from Marietta. That's another thing. And I it's just to this thing, to this guy's stupid point. I've yet to see the Braves offer somebody a contract that wasn't fair. I mean, like, it's somebody
Ronald,
in free
Acuña
agency.
and Ozzy is criminal. I mean, it's now criminal, but when they gave it to him, obviously they were.
But no, I'm talking about in free agency. Like, one of your players is leaving free agency. Like, here's what you're going to be offered. I've yet to see them offer somebody something that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think they have. And as I've said, the Braves, they're already top 10 in payroll. I think just right on the cusp of it. And, they say they want to be a top 5 team in payroll. If you look at the attendance numbers, if you look at the battery every night, they're going to be top 5 in payroll sooner rather than later. Attendance spiked a ridiculous degree this year. And you've got guys, I think we have 60, 70 million coming off the books when you talk about Smith, Jansen, Duvall. They're going to be able to offer whatever the hell they want for Dansby Swanson. It's just about finding, a fair deal, like you said, Jake. And then they will. And I think this Freddie thing, and I actually, that's probably a pretty good article idea, but I do think this Freddie thing could play into his free agency in a positive way, the way that he came back. But let's talk about the NBA draft. That happened last Thursday. The Hawks stuck. I said they'd make a move. It sounded like they were going to make a move. They said they wanted John Collins traded before the start of the draft. That doesn't happen. They stay at 16. They move back and get Martin from UConn and AJ Griffin from Duke. Jake, you actually mocked AJ Griffin to the Hawks. So tell us a little bit about him, what you like about him, and how he fits in Atlanta.
It's funny because this is very similar to Jalen Johnson last year. Because when I first made that first mock draft, I was like, all right, well, this is going to be stupid because AJ Griffin's probably going to be like a top 7 pick. And but I was like, I kind of want to talk about it because I really like AJ Griffin. I watched a lot of Duke basketball. My roommate's a huge Duke fan, and obviously they were very good in the tournament. AJ Griffin is a strong shooter. And I think if he hadn't had 2 knee injuries, I think he's had 2 ACLs. And I think he got hurt a little bit at Duke. So there's some questions there. Strong shooter, shot almost 50% from 3. Very physical defender, the athletic profile to become, a good 3-and-D wing. The comparison that I gave him was Robert Covington, younger, athletic guy who can play defense on the perimeter and shoot some threes. And if you get that with the 16th pick, I'm okay with that. And I like Griffin's game. I did not think he was going to fall to 16. I didn't think Jalen Johnson would fall to 20 last year. So I'm happy. I think he took best player available and it filled a need too. So I'm cool with it.
To that point, Chase mentioned it on Twitter the other day, but he does not look like an 18-year-old. His body definition is like a grown man. Jacked. He's a grown man.
He's jacked. Yeah, it's shocking that he still is 18 years old, and I think he might even start next season as still an 18-year-old, which is crazy. So they get one of the youngest players in the draft, one of the most talented players in the draft, and like you said, at 16. So I'm not a huge college basketball fan. I watch LSU. I'll watch some big games, and I'll watch the tournament. But when you look at, everything I've read about this guy, it's pretty much exactly what the Hawks needed. 3-and-D defender, guys who can defend the wing, and this guy's lights out. He might be the best shooter in college basketball last season. So, and obviously he went to Duke for a reason. He's got high upside. The question is, will he be on this team to start next season? And we were talking about Dejounte Murray. We know AJ Griffin's the guy the Spurs were really interested in, so he could be on his way out. But if he is on the team, I like the pick. I think it's a guy who could contribute right away. But we'll see. We know how Nate is with these rookies. These guys haven't gotten playing time over the last couple of years very often.
Yeah, and AJ Griffin had some issues on the perimeter sometimes, with his perimeter defense. But he has the physicality and the athletic profile, and he's very willing. He's a willing defender, which is something that I personally think the Hawks need, is more guys who are willing to get a little dirty on defense. Not in the literal sense, but
yes, in the literal sense. No.
He's tripping guys. He went to Duke. Yeah. Nah, but you get the point. Like there's a desire to play some defense there, and he has the athletic build to mold into a guy that can be an elite 3-and-D defender. So I don't know if we'll see him that early. Going off of last year, I would say probably not, but I do like his upside. Love the pick.
I think his pathway to the court is a little bit more clear than last year for Jalen Johnson, just because it seems like the Hawks are gonna part ways with at least one wing. And if he's shooting lights out, you can't keep that guy on the bench. You cannot keep him on the bench, and they won't. Or I guess I hope they don't. While Jalen Johnson, he was behind Gallo, John Collins, developing, blah, 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 blah. So I think the path for AJ Griffin to get to the court is much more clear than last year's rookie.
Yeah, I thought I was going to go 2 for 2 on the go ahead. I want to get into Martin.
Well, I was like, we don't really have many wings. I mean, DeAndre Hunter is really your only true like small forward. I mean, on the roster, I mean, we play Kevin Huerter there sometimes, we play Bogey there sometimes, but yeah, I mean, the AJ Griffin's path is clear as day. We need more wings. We need more perimeter defense. We need guys that can shoot the ball. So yeah, there's definitely there are going to be opportunities for him to earn at least second unit minutes. You have to think Hunter, they want him to be the starter. So yeah, some second unit minutes. I'm expecting him to play this season if he stays on the team.
Yeah, I thought I was going to go 2 for 2, but the Hawks ended up moving back. I thought they were going to take Trevor Keels, who I really, really wanted, but I think he went at 41 to the Knicks. That's your instant DeLon Wright replacement. Big defensive-minded guard. Combo guard, can play both spots, hit some threes. But Keels went, and then they took Tyrese Martin, who I wasn't that familiar with, but the more that I looked into him, the more that I think it was, exactly what they needed. Super athletic, big rebounder at small forward. Solid defender, switchable, not the greatest scorer in the world, but definitely has a lot of athletic upside. Somebody that can definitely play some defense immediately. And if
he shot like 40% from three too.
Yeah. It wasn't anything atrocious. And he was all Big East. I believe he was a senior. He might've been a junior. But he was a guy that shot up boards. He wasn't really expected to be drafted. And apparently he killed his workouts, killed his interviews, and he shot up draft boards. So I'm a fan. I like the pick. And, he's somebody else that I think is definitely going to push for playing time almost immediately. I think he could see the floor before AJ Griffin just because of the age, the potential difference there.
Well, at the very least, the Hawks have a friggin' farm system. We are literally developing a farm system when you look at Jalen Johnson, Sharif Cooper, Martin, Griffin. Even guys like
starting five.
Yeah, even guys like Okongwu, he's going to get a huge, they're going to make it a big deal to get him a lot more minutes and potentially even make him a starter this year. But he hasn't even really had a ton of opportunities. They had him in a backup role. So, they have a freaking farm system of guys who should eventually, the upside's there with all of these guys. So I'm excited to see, but at the same time, we could see a lot of these guys getting parted ways with in trades very soon.
Martin was a senior. Martin was a senior. Did you guys like the picture that I found of him shushing the crowd at Madison Square Garden during the Big East tournament?
Yeah,
as soon as I saw that, I was sold.
Beautiful. That's probably what got him drafted in Atlanta. I don't think there's really any questions, but I was overall pretty pleased with the Hawks draft. But at the same time, I'm kind of holding off on making any rash statements or even really getting into what this team might look like next year until the whole offseason's over, because I just expect everything to change. I expect a lot of guys to get traded. So I think it's good. So it's hard for me to really give any, I wouldn't give any grades on this because I don't even know if AJ Griffin's going to be on the team next year. So, but leading up, we'll close with, the Braves leading up to this weekend. Big series with the Phillies. I really just wanted to focus on the pitching matchups coming up because tonight you have Morton, who's been fantastic, as we talked about earlier, against Zach Wheeler. On paper, not a great matchup, but hey, Morton, this is a good opportunity against another ace caliber pitcher to show us if he's all the way back. Wheeler's always been really good against the Braves. He's a hometown kid. He's going to want to show up, and that's a tough matchup. Then you got Kyle Wright in this game too. He really needs a bounce back game. He was pitching like an ace. Now his last few starts have definitely been shaky. Need to see him go out there and shove like a classic early season Kyle Wright game would be great. And then we have Anderson going against Nola, probably the worst matchup of the whole series as far as the Braves are concerned. But I think this is the Phillies offense, one thing they have is a good offense. And we really need Anderson to show that he can be a big-time pitcher again, because I think he's running out of opportunities. I really do. I know I'm not going to say he's probably got 4 or 5 more starts to prove that he can turn this around. And I think the Braves are going to have to find a new role for him.
Yeah, that comment that he said the other day in the Dodgers series about how the standing ovation for Freddie threw him off his game or something, whatever it was, and he had a terrible outing. Is such bullshit, dude. You weren't here for a decade with Freddie. You weren't best friends with him. Even if you were, get that out of your mind, dude. Max Fried has one thing on his mind, and it's throwing strikes and sitting guys down. I mean, you're a professional athlete. Are you kidding me? That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I agree. You know, he had a couple of outings before that Dodgers ones that were encouraging for sure.
They also compete with the Cubs.
That's true.
It's like shutting down the Cubs. Like there's a lot of teams, guys, that have been shutting down the Cubs lineup and like the Athletics lineup. Like those teams suck. So I mean, that's why I think this is a huge, litmus test for him against a good team like the Phillies or a good lineup like the Phillies, to see if he's still got it because, Soroka is coming back. And even guys like Kyle Muller. I mean, Kyle Muller's out down there shoving in AAA. Like, how much longer are the Braves, while they're in the heat of a division race, just going to let Ian Anderson go out there and struggle? I think I do think that he's still got a little leash left because, the potential of who he is and what he's done for the team in the past, especially in the postseason. But at a certain point, they're going to have to, switch roles with him.
Yeah, definitely.
Something else that we haven't brought up, and I hate it because he's one of my favorite players, but no Bryce Harper is huge. Nicholas Castellanos is not having a good year. And obviously Bryce Harper is one of the best.
Dominating June, though. Schwarber in June is like an absolute behemoth.
Didn't he do that? Didn't he hit like 6 home runs in a week last year in June?
I think I saw a tweet. I think it was from I forget who it was from, but they were just like the last 2 Junes, Schwarber has like 30 bombs in the last 2
Oh my
Junes.
God. I can't because he got player of the month on MLB The Show or something, and it was like he hit like 6 home runs in like 3 games or something ridiculous like that over a series.
Yeah, and the next closest is like 19. Like in the last 2 Junes. So yeah, he's been just an absolute behemoth in June. So he's
but still Bryce Harper, one of the best hitters in baseball. Him not being there is going to be huge. As much as I love him, I hate that he's hurt. But
yeah, what is I know he hit his hand. Did it come back with a fracture?
I think that's what Passan said. It broke his thumb. Yeah,
broken thumb.
I mean that can be 4 weeks. It can be 8 weeks. I will say I'm with you there, Jake. I love Bryce. I love me some Bryce Harper. It's always fun playing with him. It's kind of weird because he's just kind of transformed into one of those guys that was really easy to hate to now he's really easy to love. And I think most baseball fans really just he's just become like a good dude that loves baseball and is athletic and also can drop absolute tanks. Like who doesn't love guys like that?
I mean, he grew up, man. I mean, yeah, he grew up. Like he was like a 17-year-old kid on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they were calling him Little LeBron in baseball. Like, of course, he's a cocky little shit. But
yeah,
to that point, we probably won't have Ronald. So their best player, our best player. I mean, it does even out for sure. Funny story. My roommate actually got me. Like I had to look it up. He told me he hates Bryce Harper, and I'm on y'all side. I love Bryce Harper. And he hates him. And I was like, why? And he's like, he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. And I'm like, I don't think he's a bad guy. And he's like, yeah, he was spitting on kids early in his career. And I was like, what? How have I not heard about this? I go through Google for 5 or 10 minutes and he's over there cackling on the couch. And I'm like, oh, you asshole. Like, it definitely got me. He just hates him because he's pretty probably. And great. I mean.
Yeah, he's pretty and great. And he's actually one of the few baseball players that's jacked and an athlete. Like that guy's doing 40-inch box jumps. Like there's a reason why he's hitting 500-foot bombs. But we'll be back next week talking a lot more about that Braves Phillies series. Hopefully, and we'll probably be back with if this Dejounte Murray stuff goes down, we'll probably have another short episode on that. So a lot of good stuff coming up. Thank you guys for listening again.